Hi guys, welcome to Office Blokes React. I am Office Bloke Dave.
I'm Office Bloke Mike.
I'm Office Bloke Dan.
Collectively, we are the Office Blokes. Yep. It's a true factual statement. Now, we have a little thing called a Patreon page, and I think, if I remember rightly, Mike, are we the first people in history to have a Patreon and talk about it on YouTube?
In this office we are, yeah.
Right, okay. Fair enough.
Yeah. Go to patreon.com then, put in Office Blokes React. If you want to support our channel, it'd be absolutely amazing. We've got tiers starting just £1.50. Other tiers, you can actually get connected to a Discord server, which a lot of people seem to like. So got a weekly exclusive podcast as well for patrons. So go down there, check it out.
And channel members.
Oh yeah, channel members.
There you go.
As well, there you go.
Yeah.
In harmony.
Channel members is just a folder full of dick pics.
Nice.
Channel members.
Yeah. All right.
There you go. You looked at me like, why would it be that?
Yeah.
Had to justify it, which took all of the funny out of it. Right then, wannabe states of the United States. Proposed states. States.
Right.
I don't know. Is he any proposed breakaway states right now, or is this a historical thing? Do you think?
Well, I know that there's the Texit thing that people talk about, and one of our fans, is a proponent of.
I think if they've got the states, they're all in place. It's a bit like in this country. Sometimes you might get a new city, might you?
Gibraltar's just become a city.
Gibraltar, really?
Yep.
There you go then.
Warrington's been after it for absolutely ages.
Fucking hell.
Yeah.
Sort itself out first. It's a shithole.
It's got a cathedral and it's got a hospital, which are supposed to be two of the prerequisites to be a city, apparently.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Don't
right.
make that say.
It's got the pub as well. But yeah, states-wise, you think they'd be all sorted by now, wouldn't you? So unless, like I said, there's breakaway ones, what would be called something else.
Well, maybe this is historically when the states were being established. You know, maybe like people tried to colonise one area and call it something and it failed.
I know our borders have moved with all the shires and everything, haven't they, over the years, Yorkshire and Lancashire. And
East Yorkshire has always had a sort of like a different name, hasn't it?
East Riding
East Riding, Humberside.
Yeah.
Now it's East Yorkshire again now, I think.
Yeah.
It's like, that's what I'm saying about West Virginia and Virginia, for example. Does someone like West Virginia want to be something different, or is it happy with West Virginia? It's like North and South Carolina.
Or do they want to unify
and make a different
state?
Yeah.
Bit more west of West Virginia, maybe.
Yeah.
Everyone makes stuff
good
up.
point.
We've got such a thing as West Timpley now, and like East Altrincham and things like that. So it's all about property prices. Let's get into it. Wannabe states of the United States. Let's do it.
Have you ever asked yourself why we have one state named after a president, but half a dozen states named after kings and queens of other countries? Well, that wasn't the original plan. There have been quite a few attempts to name states after the founding fathers that ended up failing.
Edit this bit out, Dave.
What an intro.
Great intro.
So let's start at the beginning. Before Vermont became the 14th state, there were at least two other places trying really hard to get that coveted spot. First, let's talk about this bit of land, which at the time was part of North Carolina. Since they were on the other side of the Appalachian Mountains, the government of North Carolina had a really hard time governing the area. So the people there decided to form their own potential state named Frankland. They petitioned for statehood in 1785, but were rejected because North Carolina didn't really feel like giving up the land just yet. So they changed their name to Franklin after the at the time still living Benjamin Franklin and asked him to help with getting recognized. Franklin was famously full of himself, but his response was easily one of the most nicely worded "I know what you're trying to do and it's not going to work" dismissals ever put to paper. "I am sensible to the honor which your excellency and your council thereby do me, but being in Europe when your state was formed, I am too little acquainted with the circumstances to be able to offer you anything just now that may be of importance." The state of Franklin eventually gave up their attempt and were absorbed into the territory that became Tennessee in 1796. But that doesn't stop the people who live there from slapping State of Franklin on businesses and tourist spots to this day. At the time, this region, which was controlled by Virginia and Pennsylvania, was also on the other side of the Appalachians and was difficult to govern from their respective capitals, and as a result was likewise trying to become the 14th state, known as West Sylvania. But promotion of the independence movement was made illegal and an act of treason in 1782, which technically made it punishable by death. The reasoning behind that was that that land belonged to the Native Americans, and creating a state there might start a war, which the US obviously didn't want. So it remained part of Virginia, at least until the Civil War. Again, it was on the other side of the Appalachians, so geography helped separate the people. And when Virginia broke away from the US to join the Confederacy, West Sylvania broke away from Virginia to stay in the Union. This happened literally weeks after the Civil War started. So the delegates of the area got together to decide on a new constitution and perhaps more importantly, what to name this new state. I have an idea, let's call it Kanawha. What? Kanawha. Why are you putting so much emphasis on the H? I don't know, it just sounds better. That the fact that you're doing that is the main reason we're not going to call it that. Let's call it Columbia. The capital is already the District of Columbia. We can't call it that. How about New Virginia? Are you seriously? We might as well just go back to calling it West Sylvania. And so West Virginia was born. As you'll soon realize, America, like Britain, is not very creative when it comes to the naming. Oftentimes we don't even change it from whatever it was before.
Whoa. America, like the UK, isn't very creative with the naming. We've literally got places like Cockermouth.
Do you know how that got its name? When your mum lived there, right?
We've got some interesting names. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, there is.
I don't even know where they come from.
The pants.
Yeah. Ramsbottom.
Yeah, Ramsbottom.
When you think about it.
Ramsbottom, Cockermouth, back to Ramsbottom. Rubbed breast. Squeeze titty.
Florida. Florida was originally a Spanish colony and means the land of flowers. But because of the expansion of the United States, many Americans came to settle in the area. In 1799, an American banded together with the local Seminole and Muskogee Indians to form the short-lived state of Muskogee. It's worth noting that the Indian tribe it was named after was spelled with a C, not a K, but whatever. It lasted all of 4 years before it was destroyed. But thanks to that, combined with the ever-expanding United States, the territory became too expensive for the Spanish to maintain, so they ceded the territory to the US in 1810, at which point the area was divided into East and West Florida. Anyway, it was admitted as the full state of Florida in 1845. But the story doesn't end there. Several times since then, including as recently as 2008 and 2014, the counties in southern Florida have proposed resolutions to split the state in half. What would they name these two partitions? North and South Florida. See what I mean? Trust me, this is a recurring theme. So let's move on to a state I brought up in my last...
What's the point? Is it just smaller government, do you
Possibly,
think?
I don't know.
Maybe.
You don't want
What, by splitting into North and South?
Yeah. More autonomy for your local area, so that's all I can
we
think.
move a lot of stuff around here, like you say, borders. I mean, this was once.
This was Trafford at one point, and then Greater Manchester and
still
Cheshire.
Trafford.
Well, still technically Cheshire, wasn't it? It was known as Cheshire all the time.
Yeah.
Then it was
Trafford.
Then it's Trafford, which it still is Trafford, but
It's part of Greater Manchester.
and part of Greater Manchester as well. Yeah, you're right. And we've got Warrington postcode.
Yeah.
So it's bizarre.
We've got a Cheshire postcode in a Trafford area, in a borough, Trafford borough that was once Cheshire, that now comes under Greater Manchester.
but people still call it Cheshire
because that's where the money was. That's the You used to get more bang for your buck on the property prices, like Dave said, and the schooling as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a big thing, isn't it? Big thing.
Yeah, I guess like if you are a proponent of small government or local government and allow us autonomy to rule over, because you think of the size of America and you've got someone really far away dictating how you are down there and what taxes you pay and everything else.
Yeah.
I kind of get it, I suppose.
Video on the topic of states. Texas. As I mentioned before, Texas likes to brag that they used to be an independent republic and that they can secede whenever they want. They can't, but they can break themselves up into 5 states if they ever felt like it. They've never made plans to break up into that many, but they have proposed breaking up into 2. The first plan was drawn up in 1870 after the Civil War and would divide Texas along the San Antonio River. Don't worry, they were a little more creative with the names this time. They wanted to call this part Lincoln and this part Jefferson. You'd think that a state that fought on the losing side of the Civil War would get a little salty over the idea of naming themselves Lincoln. And you'd be right. So they changed the name to Matagorda, which is Spanish for thick bush. Grow up. The plan was reintroduced in 1906, then again in 1915, and then again in 1921. It made it to Congress once or twice, but obviously never passed.
Nothing to do with George then, right?
Cousin.
He's a Texan, isn't he? Yeah.
fast. Then in 1945, after World War II, this area of northern Texas and the Oklahoma Panhandle— hey wait, why does Oklahoma have a panhandle anyway? I'll get to that later, but anyway, they were tired of being ignored by Texas and Oklahoma and drafted a proposal to secede and form the state of— wait, actually take a second to think of a name for this proposed state on your own. Trust me, it's just as unoriginal as you expect it to be.
Texahoma.
Oakland, Texas.
Yeah, Oklasus.
Okay, you got it? Did you guess Texlahoma? Because I'm guessing you were pretty close, maybe only one letter off. Obviously that didn't happen either, but this isn't the first time they proposed breaking up Oklahoma. Back when it was called the Indian Territory, they were seriously considering making this area a legitimate Indian-controlled state named Sequoia. The movement lasted until 1907, when the US Congress predictably didn't let them create an Indian-only state and instead created Oklahoma. In 1939, during the Great Depression, many Plains Indian tribes got together with the mostly Republican ranchers in protest of FDR's New Deal, with those crazy democratic ideas and plans to build infrastructure, and submitted a proposal to break away and form the state of Absaroka. They even had their own license plates and their own Miss Absaroka 1939. The plan was abandoned shortly afterwards, especially once World War II began. Let's jump back in time a bit to the 1840s, when the Rockies were mostly inhabited by Mormons. After the Mexican-American War, when Texas became a state and California was in the process, the Mormons decided they better stake their claim and sent someone to Washington. Hello, we're the Mormons, and we would like to create the state of Deseret. That's a pretty big area.
Wow.
Yes, well,
greedy,
you just
aren't they?
admitted Texas, which is pretty big, and California is pretty big too. Texas is special, and California has gold. What do you have? Polygamy? Yeah, get rid of that and we'll talk. So California became a state and Deseret did not. Instead, they were lumped into the Utah Territory as part of the Missouri Compromise of 1850, which I'll talk about later. But as part of the compromise, California joined the Union as a free state, and they had to pinky promise to send one pro-slavery and one anti-slavery senator to Congress, which caused all sorts of problems. So right away, there was already a plan to break California up into two states, with the northern half being named Shasta and the southern half named Colorado, after the ruddy Colorado River. They later decided to keep the northern half named California, which by the way comes from the Spanish word for land of the Caliph, as in the Islamic Caliphate. Just putting that out there.
Wow.
Anyway, once the Civil War started, this plan was obviously dropped, which is a good thing because the Colorado River no longer drains into the Pacific Ocean in California, or anywhere else for that matter. So they would have named themselves after a river that dries up in their state. But since then, there have been several plans to break up California, including one in 2013 that actually gained some traction, appropriately named the Six Californias Plan. It would have created the state of Jefferson, Silicon Valley, North California, Central California, West California, and South California. But in 1859, at the same time California was considering naming half of itself Colorado, the gold miners over here hoped to make this territory into the state of Jefferson. But the economy was based almost entirely on gold mining, which brought in all the drunkards and criminals. And since this area was populated by Mormons, who didn't like the crime associated with gold and still hadn't given up polygamy, that whole area was cut out of the proposed state. Around the same time, they were considering naming this state, or this state, Lincoln. It seems like the names Lincoln and Jefferson go hand in hand, but that obviously didn't happen, so they had to come up with a new name. Well, we can't call this Jefferson if we don't also have a Lincoln, so what should we call it? How about Idaho? What does that mean? Absolutely nothing. I just made it up. What? Get out of here with that nonsense. Nobody would be stupid enough to use a made-up name. Seriously, the word Idaho is completely made up. The people of Idaho like to claim that it means salmon eater in Comanche, which is true, but the Comanche lived down here, and the guy who came up with the name didn't know that. It's the same as if you slammed your head on your keyboard and later found out that the garble actually means something in a language you've never heard of. Hey, remember when California was going to name themselves after that one river? Yeah, well, that river actually starts here, so how about that? So boom, Colorado was born. But we're still not done. The Pacific Northwest used to be jointly occupied by the US and Great Britain. In 1846, they signed a treaty officially breaking the area up and establishing the mostly straight border between the US and Canada. Originally, the area was going to be called the Columbia Territory after Christopher Columbus, which is why the area north of the border is now called British Columbia. But they wanted to avoid any confusion with the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., which stands for the District of Columbia. So they called it... Washington Territory. Anyway, the original plan was to break up the area into 3 states: Washington, Jefferson, and Lincoln, because these are the 3 presidents anyone is allowed to admire. It doesn't matter whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, if you say that you admire any of these 3, you'll get a round of applause, which is partly why these 3, along with Teddy Roosevelt, were put on Mount Rushmore. But since the area had also been called Oregon Country when it was under US and British control, when Jefferson applied for statehood in 1848, they adopted the name Oregon. Since then, there have been a few attempts to break away Southern Oregon and Northern California to reform Jefferson, all the way up until 2013. It was even part of the 6 Californias plan. But anyway, because the eastern half of what would have become Lincoln was full of gold, and again, nobody wanted those filthy gold-digging criminals in their state, that area was given to Idaho, and the rest became the state of Washington in 1889. But
I thought Idaho was what became...
No, it's Colorado. They didn't go with the name.
Oh, it was just a proposed name.
Yeah.
Must have meant something if another state ends up being called Idaho.
Yeah, salmon eater.
Said that already.
I think they said it was made up though, didn't they?
area was given to Idaho, and the rest became the state of Washington in 1889. But when this was all still in the works, when the US was still on their Manifest Destiny kick, they hoped to control the entire Pacific coast. So they bought Alaska from Russia, an area 2/3 the size of the Louisiana Purchase, for about half the price. Look, here's the actual check that we used to buy Alaska. That's right, we're the old ladies at the grocery store paying by check. Anyway, the hope was that by controlling territory both north and south of Canada, Britain would just give up trying to control British Columbia and hand it over. Obviously, that didn't happen. But funny enough, since the entire Pacific Northwest is inhabited by both former British and former American settlers, there's a small independence movement that would unite the area into an independent republic known as Cascadia. Probably not going to happen, but look, they even have their own flag. But that's not all. There are currently several movements within the United States to break up current states. For a long time now, New York City and Long Island have thought about separating and creating the state of Long Island. That's usually because the area is more economically active and they're tired of sending tax dollars upstate. Likewise, the people of the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, called Yoopers after the abbreviation UP, consider themselves so different from the rest of Michigan that they've tried to break away and create the state of Superior. There have been several other smaller, less significant independence movements, most notably the Conch Republic in Key West, Florida, which is mostly just a joke and is never seriously considered breaking away. It's mostly just a tourist thing. So there you have it. Combined with my last two videos, this is the entire history of the United States. So we can finally move on to... Wait, you said you were going to talk about the Missouri Compromise and why Oklahoma has a panhandle. Oh, okay, fine. One more video on the history and geography of the United States, and then we're moving on to talk about other countries, okay? Not all of my viewers are American. Yeah, but most of them are. Okay, anyway, at least for now, you know better.
Good video.
Very good.
It was, yeah.
Like that.
Like his narration there.
Yeah.
Pretty good. Clear, concise.
Yeah, informative.
Yep, very good.
I like
But it's interesting that there's still some states wanting to break away and there's still sort of a bit of
2013, he said. I'm sure. I wonder if there's any that's like more recent than 2013.
It sounds like people are thinking about it all the time, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know, in certain places, you know, we want to break away and... Yeah, really interesting. You think it would just be set in stone now, wouldn't you? But clearly not the case.
I wouldn't mind betting that there's one contentious political issue that causes a lot of this.
Probably a lot of it is political, I guess, yeah.
There's a state mandate for something or a state law and a certain area disagree entirely and they're like, we're going to break away, we want to make our own rules.
Yeah.
And it spirals from there.
You see that with New York, and it's saying about Long Island and Manhattan wanted to sign. I mean, you think how much business and revenue is made in them areas.
Yeah.
And they're sending it all up to, I don't know where the state capital is it Albany or something like that? And it's they're sending it to sort of like remote little areas in upstate New York that are not nowhere near as lucrative as what you've got down in Manhattan and Long Island sort of thing.
It makes sense.
Interesting.
It does make sense. But, I mean, when we did the history of the entire world, you see how much maps and borders are constantly changing. So to think that the States or even the UK are exempt from that is just nonsense.
True. Yeah.
It will change over years, won't it?
Things still are, aren't there? Still contentious issues on
the island.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you know, in certain places in the world, you don't have to see what's going on in Russia and Ukraine at the moment.
Scotland wanting independence.
Scotland wanting independence. Even
Wales,
Wales, yeah, down towards the Falklands, Ireland. I mean, that's just here. So you can imagine what it's like, throughout the world. There's probably things going on all the time.
Well, there's loads of ones that want to do independence from the Commonwealth. I think Jamaica's the most recent
of course,
one.
yeah. I think there's a few of those, isn't there, as well? So
I'm all for it. You know what? We should be able to vote on Scotland's.
I think as long as
we should be able to kick Scotland out before they do it to us.
We're thinking about leaving. See ya. See ya.
You've left already. See you.
Now, what I was thinking with, obviously the EU made it clear that if Scotland get independence, they're not just joining the EU. It's a lot more complicated than that.
I think so, yeah.
Currency. We'll be able to use our currency.
Yeah, and there'd need to be a hard border and things like that. And what I was thinking is if Scotland did do it, 3 of my grandparents were Scottish, and I may be able to get an EU passport as well as a
What, you won't be in the EU?
British passport. If they did, I mean, this is like years down the line.
What are you going to do with an EU passport?
Free travel throughout Europe.
How often do you go to Europe?
All the time.
When was the last time you went?
I'm a hologram. I'm not even here right now. I'm in France.
Exactly.
Cornwall doesn't count.
Cornwall don't count, mate. Yeah.
Cornwall will be
Old
independent
Derbyshire.
next. Yeah, Cornwall will be independent next. Kerno.
There has been things about that.
You can travel.
There's something that they've been looking at, isn't it, over the years?
Yeah. The fucks without the tourism, though.
Oh, yeah.
The tourism isn't going to end, but they benefit a lot. During the winter, it's desolate in a lot of Cornwall.
Yeah.
So without the money from the rest of the country, it'd be problems.
But it's one of them where you can travel freely around the world pretty much anywhere.
I know.
You just need a visa for many places and do the right documentation. You just don't want arseholes coming in.
Yeah,
they shouldn't be allowed in there. So, you know what I mean?
I don't give a shit if Scotland are independent or not. It actually doesn't affect me in any way.
No,
I don't really see why. I like the fact that we're unified, and I'd like us all to get on.
Same here.
But again, like
if they want something different and that's what the people decide, then go ahead.
I hope they go independent on, like, say, the 1st of January, and on the 2nd of January, Norway invades them.
It's just like, sorry, right?
Sorry, lads. You're freaking on your own now, yeah.
Well, they're voting for independence. We're rebuilding Hadrian's Wall.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Bricking them in.
Breeze blocks as they be, won't it?
And they can build it.
I'm pay for it.
Yeah. I've heard that before somewhere.
Yeah, it just rings a bell, doesn't it?
Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed that too. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.